Welcome to our channel, T-conecto. As I was trying to explain, James, this is the first time that I do this in English. I'm not a native speaking English guy, so please again forgive me if I get stuck. I'm going to speak in Spanish, and then I know you understand me, so everybody else in El Salvador and outside can understand, because we're going to have here some traducciones. We're going to have here some traductions, okay? James, we're going to speak here tonight. First of all, I give you the welcome. Before I give you to let you speak, I want to invite everyone to give likes to our videos, and if you can donate to this channel. This is a free channel. It depends only on all of us, all of you guys and girls that like our contents. Okay, so we invite you subscribe and give likes to our videos. We're going to speak tonight about Bitcoin, a little bit about economics and finance. As far as we know, I am a communication and marketing expert. I do have some knowledge in economics, although it's not my regular science. Welcome, James Syder. He's from Australia. He lives in El Salvador, in El Sonte. He's the guy who has invited us all the time to the Bitcoin market. We appreciate that opportunity, and he's a Bitcoin guy, so we want to ask some questions about Bitcoin. Please introduce yourself, James. Welcome.
Thank you, Ernesto. It's very kind of you, and I apologize. Mi español es mal. Estoy aprendiendo, pero es mal. But we will figure it out. Yeah, so I've been here for 4 years now. I fell in love with El Salvador in late 21, early 22. I see this country on a very, very positive trajectory, as opposed to where I'm from, which I think is not heading in a good direction. So I'm here trying to build a life, trying to build businesses, trying to provide jobs. And I'm very, very passionate about Bitcoin, but also about general economic development in general. And that's why I'm here. Ernesto was kind enough to invite me on. So I'm an open book. I'm happy to talk about whatever the maestro wants to discuss.
I'm an open book too. My wife claims all the time that on me. She says, I'm not supposed to be that way, but it's my nature. So we shared something here besides open mind and the profound belief in freedom. So, James, whenever you say that economics is not going well in Australia and that economics is going well in El Salvador, what do you mean? Because as far as I know, there's a lot of freedom in Australia, and well, there's freedom in El Salvador also, but there's restrictions as always.
Yeah, sure. No country is perfect, of course. I would say that there is less and less freedom in Australia as time goes by. In my opinion, Australia is heading very, very quickly towards a communist dictatorship. There are plenty of examples, whether it be the overregulation of businesses or massive curtailing of free speech, and huge influence from China and from terrible corporate interests. So in my opinion, Australia is not heading in a good direction. I've had many talks with Salvadorans about that. I have a few Salvadoran friends that actually live in Australia, excuse me. And I've done talks with kids in high schools here and things like that. And they unfortunately seem to think that Australia is some sort of utopia, which I think it was in the past. But that has changed especially over the last 20 years. And being from there, I've seen it get worse and worse and worse. El Salvador isn't perfect, but I do believe in what Bukele's done in terms of bringing security to the country. I think he's done some interesting things in terms of Bitcoin legislation, AI legislation, tech legislation, And there's more things coming in that direction. So I see El Salvador as much more, in the future, as a much more prosperous country, whereas honestly, I see Australia becoming sort of like a vassal of China. And me personally, I don't want to live in a place like China. I don't want to live in a surveillance state. I don't want to live in a place without any freedom. I see much more opportunities here, personally.
That is very interesting because I think for me, I have lived here all my life. I lived a year in the States and I lived another year in Germany when I was a little kid. But this is very interesting for me because I thought that it was supposed to be the other way. I mean, we already had a civilian war here in El Salvador, and there was this huge straight clash of titans between, because it was not only we shared the blood, and it was a fighting between brothers and sisters, but
Mm,
superpowers were fighting in El Salvador as they were fighting in Angola and other places at that time specifically. So we come from that clash of ideas, and now we have here this government that comes from that kind of thinking and has renewed itself, and it's executing a policy that goes to the technological way and all the issues that you have on. But I have never. It's strange for me because I've never heard that Australia was under such an influence from China, and that I know about freedom of speech because I'm an expert in communication, mass communications, as it used to be called before. But you know, there are corporate issues about the owning of the media. There's books. We have studied these books at the university,
mm,
not about the content and the audiences, about the owning. Who owns the media and why there is so much, propaganda. And if you get out of the propaganda, you might get, cut out of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all those great channels. But tell me more about this China influence because this is brand new for me. I was never aware of that.
Well, I mean, I have a few examples to give you. For almost all of the universities in Australia, for example, have what's called a Confucius Institute, which is, Confucius was an old Chinese philosopher. Confucianism is a creed, a form of philosophy, shall we say. But it's also become an extension of the CCP, of the Chinese Communist Party. And there are Confucius Institutes at most universities in Australia. And these also operate as bases for the CCP and for a way for them to influence students, whether they be international students or local students in Australia. We have given up massive amounts of land rights to China. And it's not just China. Let me be clear. China is just it's in our locale. We've also given up massive land rights to the United States, for example, in the past. But the Chinese influence there is getting very, very over the top, in my opinion. And even if you were to take China out of the equation, we are heading to a cashless society, shall we say, which is basically a society that if you annoy the wrong people in the political establishment, they will essentially be able to cut you off from your money. This is partly why I'm very passionate about Bitcoin, because it's money that cannot be censored by a government or by any third party. We've already had examples of that happening in Australia and in Canada, where particular political protests, if you were at those protests, they will cut you off from your bank account. And this is a very, very effective form of political suppression. And the other thing, it's interesting you mentioned the war in El Salvador. Australia hasn't had a war in a very, very long time. And I would never wish that upon any society. I think war is horrible. But one of the things in terms of Australia not having dealt with a war on its own soil for a very, very long time is that the people are very complacent. They think that the government has their best interests at heart. And in my opinion, the government doesn't. I would actually say they're quite insidious, and they are moving towards a CBDC total surveillance state. It's happening more and more. I mean, even to give you an example from my personal life, I tried to renounce my Australian citizenship, and they wouldn't let me. Even though I haven't lived there in 8 years, they said, no, we're rejecting your renunciation of your Australian citizenship. And they're going to bring in global taxation in the next couple of years. So for me personally, I guess for some people it might sound a little bit extreme, but having not lived there for 8 years, not wanting the passport anymore, I don't think I should be paying taxes to that government. And they've basically said, no, you have to remain a citizen, and soon they're going to be taxing me globally. And that to me is very troubling, and something that I fundamentally disagree with. So yeah, that for me is a few examples of why Australia is turning into a totalitarian state, and why I have my family there and I miss them dearly. But they come and visit me in El Salvador. I don't go and visit them. I really have no interest in seeing that country again. Sorry, that was a bit of a rambling answer, but
No, but it's okay. It's okay. I understand. There's a Swiss colonel that has been speaking about the Ukrainian-Russian war, and he has given his opinions. And they took all his money, even though he worked for NATO for many years. They took all his money. They took his accounts, his bank accounts. They shut his bank accounts at Brussels, and they left him with no money. He has to go to Switzerland. But I understand. I've been around, Al Pacino says in the movie. I've been around, I've been around, and
this
I
is
understand what you're
partly
saying.
why, sure, this is partly why Bitcoin is so important, because Bitcoin as a protocol allows you to engage in economic trade, whatever it might be, without a government, a bank, an institution stopping you from doing it. They can't cut you off from your funds, whereas within the traditional system, they can. If you annoy them enough, they will take away your money. That's partly why it's so important.
So this philosophy about Bitcoin is a philosophy about freedom, and it was born that way. I understand. It was born against corporations and huge banks and everything. I hope I not might get shot from YouTube because I'm saying this, but this is how Bitcoin was born. It's history. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I mean, without getting too in the weeds, Bitcoin is a culmination of a lot of different technologies being put together in the same way. So there are a lot of, they call them cypherpunks, which are essentially people that write code that are designed to enhance personal sovereignty and personal freedom. And cypherpunks have been writing code since the 70s and the 80s, really. And what Satoshi did with Bitcoin was take a whole bunch of these different technologies and put them together into a piece of software called Bitcoin. And it was in response to a lot of the central banks printing money, in terms of people being cut off from the financial system. And like I said, without getting too technical into it, the very first block of Bitcoin that was mined, Satoshi actually embedded a newspaper headline from, I believe it was the Telegraph in the UK, and it was Chancellor on the brink of bailout for banks. So it was late 2008 or early 2009, right when the GFC was happening, and governments were bailing out these banks globally for making very, very bad decisions. And they were essentially taking public funds to keep these banks alive, even though, in my opinion, those banks should have been allowed to die and go into bankruptcy. But instead, they took public money and bailed them out. So it was a direct response to this kind of financial corruption that exists globally. And El Salvador has been a victim of that as well. Obviously, you guys used to have the colon, but you've been on the US dollar for a long time. El Salvadorans and the El Salvadoran government doesn't have any say over what happens with the US dollar. They have zero say over what happens with US monetary policy. It happens in Washington at the Fed, and that is fundamentally unfair. you essentially have a parasitic class that are allowed to print money. If you or me print money, it's a capital offense. They're going to find us. We're going to go to jail. But there are a select group of people out there that are allowed to print money, and that kind of breeds this parasitic class. It's called the Cantillon effect, where those closest to the money printer, aka friends of the Fed, the banks, the lobbyists, all of these sort of corrupt politicians, they get access to the money first, and then people further down the line, working class people like myself and yourself, we're the last to receive the benefits of it, and we're actually more likely to get hurt by inflation. So it leads to quite a corrupt cycle. And that is what Bitcoin solves. We're essentially moving onto a monetary standard that is not in their control. They cannot print it, they cannot issue it, they cannot control it. And that's why it is, in my opinion, a revolutionary technology.
I remember that what you're saying about 2008. They even gave huge bonuses to the presidents of these banks
Correct.
because they broke the banks.
Correct.
That incredible. Everyone
Yes.
was surprised about that, but as you say, we're in this puzzle. We're just little pieces, not even huge pieces. We're little pieces, so we have nothing to say. But
Yes.
back again with Bitcoin in El Salvador. As far
Mm.
as I know, it started in El Sonte as a trading, way of life in
Mm.
between local people and surfers and everybody else who was willing to do so. I
Mm.
understand there's this huge event here on the 26th, I think, of January. Do you know something about
You mean the Plan B forum?
Plan B? Yeah, that's correct. Plan B. I've seen the
Yes.
advertising.
Yeah, so that's on the 30th and the 31st of January.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is a great conference. They've put it on. They put it on last year as well. So that's out. That's from an organization called Plan B, which is a Bitcoin educational initiative, a
Great
global.
name, by the way. Plan B. It's
Well,
very
that's
smart.
the idea, right? It's if you don't trust the regular financial system, you're going to need a Plan B, right? I mean, I don't quote me because I don't work for them, but I can see the joke in there. Yeah, they're a great organization.
We
So they're
celebrate great ideas in this channel, so that's a great idea. We're advertising. I was a copywriter for more than 20 years. I've been a copywriter for all my life, so I like to play with words, and I think that's a great, you know, uh, storytelling phrase. Plan B. It's a,
well, another
like
interesting thing
yourself, I laughed when I saw that.
communications, advertising, copywriting, right? One of the interesting things about Bitcoin is there's no boss, there's no CEO, there's no organization. It's just a piece of code, and there are hundreds of thousands of people that are passionate about it. We kind of have an unpaid marketing department. There's nobody cutting checks for any of this advertisement. It's just people are passionate about it all over the world. It's kind of a very interesting self-sustaining mechanism. It's
Okay, yeah, that's good. But I'm gonna be here, devil's advocate, a little bit. Uh,
sure.
when there's no organization,
Mhm.
there's a risk. There's
Sure.
a risk, and how do we manage this risk? Because there's a risk, and inherent in these transactions. I love freedom, but I understand that freedom has also been, a very, very lethal weapon on some historic moments everywhere. And I understand about sanctions. Sanctions can only go only on personal persons, but they can go to governments also. They can
Mhm.
take all the money from these governments because they don't like whomever is in charge or whatever. This is a lethal weapon. This is a war, economic war. So
Mhm.
in this economic war and in this, have you like you said, less organized or non-organized interactions? How do we manage this risk
In terms of Bitcoin?
in terms of bitcoins? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not worried about that at all, and I'll explain why. Bitcoin is open source software. It is run by hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. Uh, it is permissionless and uncensorable because of the globally distributed network. So, for example, I'll give you two examples actually. I think it was 2020, Nigeria banned Bitcoin. The Nigerian government banned Bitcoin usage. And the usage of Bitcoin actually increased by about 300%. The reason being, they cannot control this protocol. As long as you have internet access, and let me just add, you don't necessarily need internet access. They cannot control it. This is the first piece of globally distributed software that cannot be controlled. China has banned it, and people continue to mine Bitcoin and transact with Bitcoin in China, despite the iron grip that the Chinese government has on that country. They cannot stop people using it. It's very, very virulent, pervasive technology. And that's because it's a relatively simple piece of code. Obviously, there's, to any of your listeners, you need to sort of go on a dive down the rabbit hole to fully understand why it is so resilient. It'll take me hours to explain that right now, but I would invite anyone to read a few books about Bitcoin to understand why it's so hard for governments to control. Simply put, governments and individuals and institutions, they cannot ban Bitcoin. They can only ban themselves from Bitcoin. They can only remove themselves from the equation. But me, myself, and hundreds of thousands of other Bitcoiners and Bitcoin miners, we're going to continue to use Bitcoin, and there's nothing that they can do to stop us. And there's obviously a lot of technical stuff that you have to get into to really understand how that works. But that's a reality. It's been running, apart from one tiny bug in 2012, I believe it was, it's been running seamlessly for 16 years, despite political machinations, despite bans in multiple countries, despite negative bills being passed in Congress in the US. Bitcoin continues regardless. Bitcoin is what is known as an anti-fragile system. Are you familiar with the word anti-fragile?
No.
Okay, so I'll try and be as quick as possible. I apologize, but there's a philosopher called Nassim Taleb, and he sort of categorized things into three categories, which is something that's fragile, aka under pressure it breaks quite easily. Then in the middle you have robust, which means that under enough pressure it will break. And then ironically enough, you have a third category called anti-fragile, which is where the more pressure applied to a particular thing, the stronger it becomes. So Bitcoin has been attacked hundreds of times a day for 16 years. And all it's led to is little changes in the code and improvements. And every attack that we receive on the Bitcoin network, we can fix it because it's modular open source code. It actually makes the protocol stronger. So we've been dealing with attacks for 16 years. Not me personally, obviously. I haven't been in Bitcoin that long, but it is a very, very resilient, anti-fragile piece of code. So we welcome the attacks, whether it's a government, quantum computing, another competitor, bring it. The more we get attacked, the stronger we become. And I know that sounds a little utopic or a little over the top, but having been in the space for a while, I've seen it happen, and it continues to do so. It's a very, very resilient piece of software.
Whenever you say romantic, you sounded like a little guerrilla warfare, financial guerrilla warfare. Yeah, sure. You were speaking in a language that I know. I understand that the key word here is freedom. Freedom, personal freedom. And whenever I do personal freedom and I invite everyone else, because you have shared with others, this is not only, and I've seen it in person, and I mean it, because I've been in your market and you have never charged on me anything. And you have invited us and we would have sell or not sell. That's our business. But you have gave the context and gave the place so we can We can interact in between each others. And personally, if I sell or not, that's another issue because there's always a brand, awareness whenever I get into this market issues. So that's a gain for me. So on this the 31st event,
Mm.
are great people coming? People are already here. How do this works, and what kind of themes are going to be treated at that event?
Sure. Well, first of all, just let me preface by saying I don't work for this event, so I don't know exactly what they're planning. I was there last year. They do a really good job. They are going to have a whole bunch of, I guess, prominent people from the Bitcoin space. I guess I would say thought leaders. So people that have been in the space for a long time, maybe people that have written theoretical books on how Bitcoin works and the societal implications of Bitcoin. And they're also going to have a stage in Spanish as well. So to any of your listeners that maybe don't speak English, there's a Spanish stage as well. And they're also going to do a live translation for any of the talks in English. And I should also add, I believe the tickets are quite expensive for foreigners, but for Salvadoreños, I think they're $21 each. So they want as many locals involved as possible. So I think the regular tickets are about $400 or $500. But if you have if you have a DUI, you can get a ticket for $21, and then you'll be able to either see the talks translated, and there will be a Spanish stage. But don't quote me on all of that because I'm not working on that conference. But that's what they did last year, and they're looking to do more of that this year. So it's a really good way if you're curious to come along, and you'll probably meet some people and see some interesting talks. So I would recommend it if maybe you've heard about Bitcoin, but you're on the fence, shall we say. I would say it's a good opportunity to learn about it.
I'm going to translate in Spanish what you just said. Uh,
Sure.
you said, si estás curioso sobre este evento que va a haber el 30 y 31, 30 and 31st, you said, is that correct? 30 y 31 de enero sobre Bitcoin que se llama Plan B, ¿verdad? Un nombre me parece a mí altamente creativo, genial. Entonces, este Plan B, sí, para los salvadoreños, acaba de decir James, el costo va a ser de $21 si tienes un DUI y estás curioso sobre el aspecto del Bitcoin, que es un hecho en nuestro país. Puede ser que estemos de acuerdo o no estemos de acuerdo, pero es un hecho legal en nuestro país. Deberíamos de indagar de qué se trata por lo menos. I think we should at least understand because it's law. Either we like it or not, it's law in El Salvador, so it's better for us to have some knowledge about this because there's an opportunity.
I
There's an
think so.
opportunity. The first
I
time
think
I came to your market, the guy with the other T-shirts,
got out
he gave me the my first wallet. I never had a wallet before, so I thank him, and that makes it's a signal of what this type of markets should be. James, we have come to an end. We have here almost 30 minutes. We got 20 minutes, and then we got 10 left.
I have more time if you want. I love talking about Bitcoin, but you're the boss. Whatever you want to do.
Oh, okay. We can do okay. Then I have another question because this
Sure.
is about: are there people in El Salvador who are playing in the big leagues with Bitcoin, as far as you know?
I'm not sure what you mean by the big leagues.
Big leagues means well, I know that every Bitcoin it's about last time I saw 100 I don't know how many thousand dollars the price for a Bitcoin. I don't
Uh,
have that money, so for me maybe it's not the correct word, but for me it's like playing in the big leagues because if you had one Bitcoin for me, you got a lot of money in fiat money. Okay, according to what I
mm,
saw whenever we did the translation,
mm,
the change experience. So, are
mm.
there here people that are interested in investing a lot of money, capital, on Bitcoin, doing business, or of course, legal reasons. I'm not saying otherwise. Do you know about that? I mean,
Yeah,
huge people, like
there are
icon
some.
people.
Yeah, there are some. I don't want to, you know, talk about other people's business, but I know for a fact there are some. I mean, even one example is literally the El Salvadoran government, right? They've stacked about almost 7,000 Bitcoin now since they've enacted the law. So that's an example of a big fish that is, they're buying one Bitcoin every day. Bitcoin is here. I would say that for a lot of regular folk in El Salvador, we've tried our best, and I shouldn't say we as a collective, but many people have tried their best to try and help get as much Bitcoin in the hands of Salvadorans as possible. That's partly why I put on the market and I do it for free, is because I want small merchants to be able to get a little bit of Bitcoin. There is what we call a unit bias, where people see, I haven't even checked the price of Bitcoin, but it's somewhere between 90 and $100,000 at the moment, I believe. People see, oh, it costs that much. I guess it's too late for me, which is not the case. You know, you can buy $5 worth of Bitcoin. You can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is divisible into much smaller units. And I see a lot more people starting to get into it. Over 3 years of running the market, we've had plenty of vendors that started as skeptics, and over the years, you know, they started stacking a little bit of Bitcoin pretty much from when Bitcoin was about $20,000, and now it's gone up to 110, and it's come back to about 90 something. It is volatile, but I see more and more adoption happening here all the time. In terms of big players, yeah, I can't really comment on other things, but it's the El Salvadoran government is very open about how much Bitcoin they are procuring. They're putting that in their treasury, and I think that's going to serve the country very, very well in the future. And there's other examples of countries that are doing the same thing, maybe smaller countries that don't have a lot of economic leverage on the global side of the macroeconomic of everything. Bhutan is a good example. Bhutan has been mining Bitcoin for a very, very long time, and they're doing incredibly well. Their government is not in debt. It's not like in the US. Like, they have a nice stack of Bitcoin. That means that they don't have to tax their population as much as they might have to. So especially for smaller countries, especially like El Salvador, and there's so many examples. There's so many countries in Africa that should be doing it too, where it'll be incredibly beneficial for them, in my opinion.
Okay, James, how about this? This is our first invitation, and I'm going to read more about Bitcoin. You have,
Mm.
awakened on my mind a little bit. I had a curse, a course, not a curse as in magical things. I had a curse. Uh, I know if I'm
Okay.
not saying well, forgive me, but I
No,
had this,
I think I
and
understand.
I was started learning about this issue. I'm going to read some more, and I'm going to invite you as a second podcast so we can continue, but with me with more knowledge about Bitcoin and have this, interchange interaction about Bitcoin and get a little deeper on this issue. Is that okay with you?
That sounds good to me. And I'll give you some books if you'd like. This is the thing about Bitcoin, in my opinion, is that it is it involves so many things. It involves economics, like Keynesian economics versus Austrian economics. It involves cryptography. It involves distributed databases. It involves praxeology and the way that human beings spend their money. It involves history. It involves so many things. Bitcoin is a very, very deep subject to the point where I think in the future, it'll be a 4 or 5 year degree where it takes you to fully understand what's going on. And I would go even further than that. You don't ever really get to the end of the implications of Bitcoin. Like, money has always been central to human civilization, right? And this is a different form of money. And it is, we've gone from seashells to rhinestones to silver to gold to all sorts of different things. Bitcoin's a new paradigm. So it is a it's a very deep subject, and it's taken me years to develop the conviction that I have for it. And I know for people that are maybe new to it, it can be a little bit daunting or easy to dismiss, shall we say. It took me at least a year of reading and listening to podcasts, watching interviews, to become fully convinced that, okay, this thing can't be stopped. It's the future, stuff like that. It's not going to happen overnight. So I'd be very happy to come back, and I'll make some book recommendations to you. I know it sounds a little crazy and a little cultish, right? But in my opinion, it's not. The more you learn about it, the more convinced, in my opinion, you will become. I mean, one of the things that I tell people, I have a small consultancy business helping get people set up. I just tell people, hey, take 10 hours and see if you can destroy this thing. See if you can disprove the premise of what Bitcoin is. No one can. In 8 years, no one's been able to provide me with a case where Bitcoin actually fails. And
don't worry, we have heard crazy things in this country for more than 40 years. So a new one, it's revolutionary. So I will grab those books that you recommend me. I'm going to read them. I'm a profound reader. I'm going to read them, and I'm going to invite you the second time. We're out of time right now, but
okay.
believe me, there's going to be a second time. I will give you the questioning, and whenever you have the time, maybe on February, we can get together again and speak more about Bitcoin. Okay, James?
I'd be very happy to. As a closing, I really believe in this country, and I think that Bitcoin is a very powerful tool to help this country. I'm a guest here. Thank you for having me in your country, and I believe it's a tool to help the country. I believe it's a way to help regular folk. I believe in that very deeply. So yeah, I'd be happy to, anything I can do to help, for lack of a better phrase, spread the good word. I'd be happy to. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Then we're gonna do it. Wait for my call. I'm gonna call you, and I hope you have a great night. Okay.
Likewise, brother.